Hello, and welcome to the now weekly episodes of NCIA Today. I'm your host, Bethany Moore, NCIA's Deputy Director of Communications, checking in with you every week on Fridays with updates on what's happening in the industry and here at NCIA. First and foremost, we're urging our viewers to take action today on an important issue that impacts vaping products. A new law could make it illegal for companies like yours to ship vaping products or components to customers unless the United States Postal Service clarifies the rules. The deadline to submit your comments is today, Friday, March 19th. So go ahead and text CANA VAPE to 40649 to learn more and take action. Other timely news was mentioned in our recent press release in response to federal and state proposals to limit the THC content in legal cannabis products and ban limited home cultivation. NCIA CEO Aaron Smith says allowing adults to possess and consume cannabis while punishing people who wish to provide it for themselves flies in the face of rationality and justice. Check out our website for more information. Next, before I highlight some of the new content on our website, let's check in with an update from our team in DC. Unfortunately, we caught up before the revelations that the Biden administration is expelling staffers with a history of legal cannabis use. While our full statement is available on our website for you to read, NCIA is disappointed with this decision that flies in the face of the overwhelming public support for federal adult use cannabis decriminalization and the administration's previously progressive positions on our plant. Now, joining me this week is Michelle Rutter-Freeberg, our Deputy Director of Government Relations. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for checking in with me again this week about what we need to know about what's happening in Congress.
Hey, Bethany, great to be back with you.
Excellent. So I know we've all been on the edge of our seats here waiting for the Safe Banking Act to be reintroduced in Congress. What's the big news?
Yeah, really exciting that I'm here talking to you today. Just yesterday, on March the 18th, the House actually reintroduced their version of the Safe Banking Act. That acronym stands for the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. And on the House side, it was reintroduced by Congressman Ed Perlmutter, who's long been a champion of not only this industry, but specifically this issue as well. And the bill was introduced with over 100 co-sponsors right out the gate, which is really, really exciting. And in addition to Congressman Perlmutter, I want to make sure that we give a little bit of love to the other co-leads on this bill. One of them is a new one, actually, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez of New York. She's taking over that lead Democrat spot from Congressman Denny Heck, who was from Washington, who is no longer in Congress. And then on the Republican side, their two co-leads are Congressman Stivers and Davidson, both from Ohio. So we really appreciate all of them reintroducing the bill. It looks pretty similar to the bill last session. It was really just some minor technical updates and clarifications to the bill. So it should look pretty similar to the version that passed back in September of 2019. People might remember the bill came to the floor for a vote. It passed by an overwhelmingly bipartisan majority, 321 to 103. It was subsequently then also included in two COVID packages. Also in 2020, obviously COVID. But unfortunately, though it's passed out of the House three different times, it did not get taken up in the Senate. So being a new Congress, we had to go back to the drawing board and start over again, start from scratch and reintroduce the bill and begin the legislative process all over again. And I should also mention, we're really excited. We're expecting next week for the Senate version to drop, hopefully. So that'll be great to have the bill dropped in both chambers for us to get to work on it and start the legislative process there. Of course, Senator Jeff Merkley, again, a longtime champion of this industry and this issue from Oregon, is the lead Democrat on the bill on the Senate side, but really exciting to welcome Senator Steve Daines. He's the Republican co-lead now on the Safe Banking Act on the Senate side, and he hails from Montana. People might remember that Montana was one of the states in the 2020 election to decide to legalize adult use cannabis. So we're really excited to have him on board and to begin working with his office and some of his Republican colleagues on the bill. And again, feeling really, really hopeful about the process now that the Democrats control the Senate. And I don't say that to be partisan. I just say that because, that was really where a lot of our roadblocks were with some of the Republican committee chairs and being able to actually get to a markup, and even the floor. Obviously, you got to go through Mitch McConnell, which was no joke, to say the least. And so we're feeling hopeful about our prospects for safe banking this session.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear there were over 100 co-sponsors upon reintroduction. Super exciting. And the MORE Act also got some traction in Congress last year as well. What can we expect to see here in the new Congress with the MORE Act?
Yeah, so people will remember the MORE Act passed out of the House of Representatives just a couple months ago, back in December, although it feels like much longer. A lot has happened in between then. But, the bill, because it passed in December, that was the end of the session. It was passed by the House, and then unfortunately didn't have the time to go through the legislative process in the Senate. And so we're excited to see the bill get reintroduced in the House. Of course, the MORE Act stands for the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act. And so that bill talks a lot about, it deschedules cannabis, of course, but really focuses on some of the harms that the war on drugs has done, particularly to communities of color. Obviously, judging by the name, it focuses on things like expungement, resentencing, and other things like that, opportunity trust funds. People can look online on our blog to learn more about that. But I expect that bill to be reintroduced in the House probably sometime this spring. I wouldn't say just yet, but not too far away from now. There's just a lot going on in Congress, obviously, all things considered. And then as we're thinking about comprehensive reform, which to me just means you're descheduling cannabis and then some, right? So it's a bigger bill than just an incremental piece of legislation like the Safe Banking Act. But thinking about comprehensive legislation and looking at the Senate side specifically, people will probably have heard at this point that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, as well as Senators Ron Wyden and Cory Booker, plan to unveil cannabis legislation sometime in the near future as well. And so we were really, really proud to be one of two industry trade associations that were included in the initial meeting with those senators. And so we're really, really excited. Again, I think that's going to happen this spring. And so we are working to get our hands on that discussion draft as soon as we can to offer our thoughts and opinions in ways that we can improve the bill. And then, like I said, just get to work. But really, really exciting. I mean, to have the Senate Majority Leader, being the lead on a cannabis reform bill, I mean, it's truly incredible.
I agree. Yes, this is all great progress, and all this work is compounding on itself over the years. And it might be a little too early in the year to be talking about appropriations, but is there anything we should be keeping an eye on at this stage of the game?
Yeah, just keep your eye on appropriations. Like you said, it's a little bit early, but the appropriation season, as we would call it, is gearing up. Right now, appropriations committee members are receiving requests from people like us to learn what amendments it is that we want to put into law. And for a really long time, the appropriations process was the only way that we could get cannabis policy reform passed into law. Obviously, we haven't yet passed standalone legislation yet, but we've at least been able to pass it out of a chamber, both safe and more. But appropriations is just the way that the government funds itself and allocates that money. And of course, you can go onto our blog. I've written about appropriations many, many times in my life if people are interested in learning more about the process, what it is, why it matters to cannabis. But again, the main thing to remember here is that this has just been one of the only avenues that we've been able to actually get these reforms passed into law. Right now, there's a provision that's been in place since 2014 that applies to medical cannabis patients, providers, programs, businesses, that essentially says the Department of Justice can't use any of its money, appropriations again, right? Can't use any of its funds to enforce federal law, AKA illegality, on these businesses. So it gave a lot of peace of mind to those businesses since it's been in law, like I said, for the last 7 years. But now that Democrats control both houses of Congress, we're going to hopefully expand upon those, include all cannabis businesses, right, including adult use, and then also looking at other provisions, things related to veterans, banking, DC, and their inability to implement their own marijuana laws, all different things, research, the list goes on. And so we're really excited, again, now that the Senate's controlled by Democrats, that hopefully we can get some of those appropriations amendments into place. And just want to be clear, again, it's not said to be partisan or to throw any shade to our friends on the Republican side of the aisle, but just having to understand the relationship there between various committee chairs and politics in that way. Of course, that's what we're here to do. to. Again, it's important to remember that we feel really, really optimistic about that process right now. So keep an eye on it. We'll certainly be updating all of our members on that. And of course, the fiscal year ends on September 30th. So the goal is to have those budget bills ready to go by then.
Awesome. Thanks for keeping on top of all that Washington, D.C. baseball or whatever people say there. It's really exciting to see all this movement springing into action as the year goes on. So it's going to be a really exciting year for the whole cannabis industry. And thank you, Michelle, and the whole team in DC for everything you're doing on behalf of the cannabis industry. We'll check in with you again really soon to see how things are going.
Sounds great, Bethany. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, so back on our blog, NCIA's Human Resources Committee has some advice for you on creating a COVID-19 vaccination policy for your company as more employees are returning back to the office. And for some even more forward-thinking thought leadership, tune into this week's podcast episode to hear from members of our Risk Management and Insurance Committee about what kind of exposure cannabis companies will have post-federal legalization. Don't forget to head to our website to check out our interactive congressional scorecard, where you can see where members of Congress in each state stand on key cannabis reform issues like the Safe Banking Act and more. And be sure to download our new policy report on gender parity in the cannabis industry, which we co-authored with the ArcView Group. You can also hear more right from the authors in this month's series of podcasts. Head to NCIA's website and download the reports. Before we wrap up this episode, here's a few reminders. With most states having vaccinated at least 10% of their adult populations, we're anticipating safely hosting our national and regional events in person later in 2021. And we've nailed down the dates for both the Midwest Cannabis Business Conference, now September 22nd and 23rd, in Detroit, Michigan, and the 7th Annual Cannabis Business Summit and Expo, by far our largest national event, has been moved a bit further along the calendar to December 15th through 17th, still in San Francisco at the famous Moscone Center. You'll be hearing more about these events in the coming weeks. Hopefully it's a nice feeling to be able to mark your calendars for an in-person event. And spring equinox is upon us, warmer weather, and much to look forward to. Which brings me to our brand new app, NCIA Mobile, which you can download to your phone now in Google Play and the App Store to stay informed, inspired, and connected on the go. In the meantime, make sure you're subscribed to our email list and listening to NCIA's weekly podcasts. NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice, hosted by yours truly, with well over 200 episodes, can be accessed on our website or on all those other platforms where you listen to podcasts. And now's a great time to invest in the future of our industry by getting more involved in NCIA, registering for our educational webinars happening every single week, and learning more about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program sponsorship opportunities. Join NCIA members who have stepped up their support by becoming DEI program sponsors like Tahoe Wellness Center and Copper State Farms and more. In the meantime, our full-time government relations team in DC is pressing on with our cannabis policy reform efforts in Congress, and NCIA's weekly webinar series keeps you connected with the industry, up to date on best practices and regulatory issues. Plus, our fireside chats are an exclusive benefit just for NCIA members, all included in your membership. Now's a great time to make sure you're following our social media channels on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to check out all the great content and inspiration we're sharing. If you're a member of NCIA, log into your new member benefit, NCIA Connect, and spark up a conversation with your fellow NCIA members and colleagues today. I look forward to seeing you next week.